You asked, and I gave it a try. I found these curb shop nightstands and thought it was a perfect opportunity to try a technique that you guys have been asking me for so long. I have posted so many videos on gel staining to get rid of orange stain, gel staining to make an existing finish darker, and I've always been asked, can I do this in reverse? Make a dark stain lighter. Today, I'm giving it a try. I'll be the guinea pig girl, and I can't wait to share the results with you. Let's get started. Here's the nightstand set I found on bulk day. It looked like somebody had tried stripping the finish off and then decided against it. I brought them home and removed the plastic on top and gave them a really good once over. There were a few scratches, dings, and some surface issues, and I understand why somebody put them to the curb. A project like this can feel daunting if you don't have experience refinishing, and there's always the time factor as well. When I started painting furniture and refinishing furniture, I can't tell you how many times I felt overwhelmed with projects, so I totally get it. Before bringing these nightstands into my workspace, I cleaned as much of the stripper residue off as best I could using mineral spirits. And doing this in a well-ventilated space and or better yet outdoors is best because it does have a strong odor. I know a few of you have mentioned odorless mineral spirits. I've never tried. I don't know if it works quite as well as the original, or maybe it takes a little bit longer to do its thing. But if anyone has ever tried and wants to leave a comment down below, I'd be quite curious. I brought these nightstands down to my studio, and now it was time to start the cleaning and the refinishing process. I started by removing all the original wood knobs off the drawers, and as I remove the hardware, it's a great opportunity to give each drawer a really good once over and see if anything needs repairing. Once the hardware was all removed, I brought out the white lightning cleaner in my spray bottle, and I mixed the powder with some water and just spray it on. And then I use a sponge to give everything a really, really good cleaning. This includes the front of the drawers, the drawer front, the inside of the drawers. I also do the side, the bottom, the back. Everything gets cleaned. Once I had finished all 6 drawers, I moved on to the body of these nightstands. As I was cleaning, I started thinking about the design I was going to do on these pieces. And since the prior owners started stripping the top and one of the drawers were already sanded down, I knew that the tops of these nightstands and the 2 top drawers were going to be painted. The rest of the 4 drawers and the body of these nightstands were going to have the light stain over the darker finish. And as I've mentioned before, curb shop pieces are awesome pieces to test things out on, whether it's a new product, whether it's a finish you've never tried. If you can grab yourself a curb shop piece that quite interests you and then try something new and different, it's an awesome way to grow your skills and to do different finishes that you're interested in without having any guilt whatsoever. If it doesn't turn out, it's no biggie. You've invested no money, and the time you've put into it has taught you something. And often, I will admit this, often when things don't turn out is when I learn the very, very most. So now it was time to test some light gel stains, and I strongly recommend testing a stain in an inconspicuous area of your project before you dive in and start covering the full thing. Because depending on the color of the stain and the tone of the wood you're applying it to, results will always vary. So I tested this Picklin White and Weathered Gray. I applied it to the top of the nightstand because I knew the tops would be getting sanded and painted. But if you're doing an entire piece, I do suggest doing it like maybe on the back or the back leg. So it's kind of in an inconspicuous area and not front forward. I decided to go with Picklin White Gel Stain on the left. And now that I'm looking back at the footage, maybe I should have went with the weathered gray because maybe the contrast wouldn't have been quite so intense and the imperfections wouldn't have shown up quite so much, which I'll get to in a bit. However, applying this gel stain is super simple. I give the drawers a quick sanding with a 220 sanding sponge, and this is just to scuff them up slightly so the gel stain has something to stick to on the existing finish. When I'm applying gel stain to an existing finish, I'm very careful not to over sand and create some areas that are raw wood and others have the finish on it. So if I was to sand heavily in some areas, exposing some raw wood, and lightly in others, leaving the existing finish, when I apply a gel stain, it's going to take very differently and look very, very blotchy. So a light sanding is all that's needed. It's just enough to lightly scuff up the existing finish and give the gel stain something to cling on to. Gel stain is like paint, not a traditional stain. It sits on top of an existing finish rather than being absorbed into the wood. I wiped off all the dust using a microfiber cloth, and now it was time to stain. To apply the gel stain, I make sure that it's very well mixed in the container, and then I just use what I have on hand or what I feel like using. So that could be a lint-free cloth, as I'm doing in this case. I've also used a paintbrush to apply the gel stain. I've used a sponge to apply the gel stain and an applicator pad. So whatever you feel comfortable with is certainly what you can use. There's no right or wrong way to apply the gel stain. I do put it on evenly. And then what I like to do is take a nice soft brush and kind of smooth everything out. Here I'm using Big Daddy's Dixie Belle brush. Sorry, I forgot the name of it. Big Daddy's Dixie Belle brush. I don't know how many inches this is, but it is a large brush that covers a really good amount of area. And I just kept on playing with the gel stain until it all looked very smooth and even to me. And as you can see, the white Picklin White Gel Stain does kind of find its way into the little divots and imperfections. And I found it a little difficult to get a perfectly smooth finish on these drawers. And these are the smaller areas. So it was quite interesting when I started doing the larger sides. I continued the same process on each and every drawer. And I also wanted to mention that the first drawer I did was the one I knew I was going to sand down. That was my practice drawer. If you have an area that you can practice on before you actually do the top of your piece or the top drawer of your piece, I always suggest it's a great idea to find what is least noticeable and practice on that and then move your way around to the front. This way you can play around with the gel stain to get a feel for how much you're going to be putting on, how much you're going to be wiping back, and if you want to smooth anything out with a brush afterwards. Or maybe you could just apply a good amount, as I've been doing here, and then smooth everything out with the brush rather than wiping it back like I often do with dark stain. If I got excess stain on the brush that I was using to smooth everything out, I just wiped off the excess on a shop towel or paper towel. So having paper towel on hand is a great idea as well. And here's the original drawer, and here are the lighter stain drawers. And as you can tell, you certainly can lighten up wood with a lighter stain. I put the body of the nightstand on its back and moved on to working on the legs, the front, and the sides of the piece. I found it a little easier to use a chip brush to apply the gel stain into the grooves and the smaller areas on the bottom. And again, I would just wipe off the excess on a paper towel and then continue smoothing it out as best I could. If you find or think that the stain is not light enough for your liking, you can always wait until the first layer of stain has dried 100% and then add a second coat. But here's where I ran into an issue. I found applying the light stain to the darker wood challenging to control. It was difficult to get a perfectly even finish no matter how hard I tried, and especially on the side where it's a larger area. And these nightstands aren't obviously a large dresser or a super large piece. So I think if it was like a very large dresser or china cabinet or something with large surfaces, it would be even more difficult. I also found that any little imperfections were amplified by the white stain, whereas when I use darker stain on lighter wood, imperfections are diminished. The dark stain takes it away from your eye, whereas the light stain draws attention to all of them. So that's something to keep in mind if you're trying to decide whether you want a light stain, a darker finish. Now, this may be a look that you really, really want, like a more rustic look, a farmhouse look, and in that case, it's ideal. However, for me, this was not the look I was going for, so I will be honest, I wasn't 100% happy with the outcome. And I can't wait for you to see the after so you can give me your opinion as well. So as I waited for the stain to dry, I brought the nightstands into my sanding room and sanded down the top finish, just getting rid of any of the scratches, any leftover residue, just to smooth everything out before I prime them. And the first drawer that I did apply the gel stain to as well got a sanding. We got rid of that gel stain on this practice drawer because it was going to be sanded down and painted as well. To cover up any bleed through and stains on the top and the drawers, I used Bonding Boss in white. And this is a water-based bonding primer that works awesome. And there's no smell and it's easy cleanup. I like applying it with a 4-inch roller. I just add some of the primer onto a paper plate, dip my roller in there and roll it on, and it goes super fast. It's a very, very easy application for this primer. And as always, if you're interested in any of the supplies that I'm using, in the description box below, you just hit the See More and it'll give you a full list of all the supplies I'm using. After the tops were primed, I went ahead and primed the 2 top drawers. I added 2 coats of Bonding Boss primer in total, and then I waited overnight, let everything dry. I came back the next morning and now it was time to choose a paint color. I decided to go with Umber, which, I've just been loving this color lately. Just love it. It's a warm, rich brown and it applies beautifully. It has awesome coverage. I really enjoy using this color. I painted the top 2 drawers, and because I used the white Bonding Boss primer underneath, 2 coats were required for full coverage. I also added 2 coats to the top of these nightstands. The top coat is included in this Silk all-in-one mineral paint, so no top coat is required for the drawers and the top of this nightstand. However, top coating the gel stain once it's 100% dry is a very, very good idea. So I ended up adding cute little upcycled hardware, and just as a reminder, here's the before. And here's the after. And the verdict is yes, you can use light stain over a darker finish. That said, I found it harder to control and apply evenly, and any sort of imperfections will definitely be highlighted. They will not be disguised. The light really brings out any little nooks and crannies. So that's something you may want to keep in mind if you want to give this a try. I'll be honest, it's not 100% my cup of tea. I don't know if I'll be doing a light over dark finish anytime soon, but this project was a fantastic reminder that every piece teaches you something new, and I am so glad that I tried. I hope this inspires you to try new things and embrace the journey, because sometimes the best discoveries come from the unexpected. So I hope you enjoyed today's makeover, and whether you can stain light over dark, it's helped you make a decision on whether you want to give this a try. Will I be trying it again? I might try tweaking it if I find another set to work on, but for the time being, I think I'm just gonna stick with darker. Thank you so much for joining me today. Feel free to like and subscribe here on YouTube. You can also find me over at salvagedinspirations.com, where I have over 600 DIY furniture painting tutorials. Sign up for our free email list, free to do. You can unsubscribe anytime and you'll get all the new projects sent right to your inbox. Until next project, have a fabulous week. Bye guys.